Welcome to Revenge with Lyra.
Your kids aren't important enough for my daughter's school ceremony, my brother said loudly, smirking as forks clinked against plates. The laughter that followed hit me harder than the words. My twins, Lily and Max, froze mid-bite. Their eyes shimmered with the kind of confusion only children feel when cruelty wears a smile. I felt the blood drain from my face, but before I could speak, my husband, Daniel, slowly set down his glass. He didn't shout. He just stood, calm and deliberate, and reached for his phone. "Daniel," I whispered, my voice trembling.
But he ignored me.
He looked around the table, at my parents pretending not to notice, at my sister-in-law smirking beside her perfect little girl in a designer dress, and then at our children. The room went dead silent. "I think," he said, unlocking his phone, "it's time the truth about this family came out." My brother's grin faltered. "What are you doing?" Daniel turned the screen toward the table, and the color drained from everyone's faces. "My name is Clara Monroe, 32 years old. I've spent my whole life letting this family treat me like background noise. But that night, the night of my niece's special ceremony dinner, something changed." Daniel wasn't bluffing, and the secret he was about to reveal would turn that smug dining room into a courtroom none of them could escape. The room felt heavy, the kind of silence that hums just before a storm. My brother, Mark, leaned back in his chair, trying to laugh it off. "Come on, Daniel. Don't start your usual drama. It's a family dinner, not a press conference." But Daniel's eyes were cold, steady. "Then maybe you shouldn't have made it public, Mark." He tapped a video on his phone and turned the volume up. The sound that came out wasn't music, it was a recording. Mark's voice, unmistakable. "Clara's husband is a joke. He's a construction manager pretending to be rich. Their kids? Not even worth the tuition they beg for." The laughter in the background, my parents' voices, hit me like a physical blow. My mom's voice followed, faint but clear. "Well, he's no doctor, like Mark. We can't expect much from that side of the family." Lily gasped. Max hid his face in his hands. Mark's confident smile shattered. "You recorded us?" Daniel didn't flinch. "You humiliated my wife in her own parents' home last month. You laughed when she walked out crying. So yeah, I recorded it, because people like you only understand proof." My dad slammed his hand on the table. "Turn that off right now." Daniel looked him dead in the eye. "You didn't say that when they talked about your daughter, like she was dirt." And for the first time, my father couldn't look at me. Mark's jaw clenched, his voice rising with fake outrage. "You had no right to spy on us, Daniel. That's disgusting." "Disgusting?" Daniel interrupted quietly. "Not as disgusting as watching your kids insult mine while you all laughed." My hands trembled beneath the table. I'd been silent too long. I looked around at the faces that used to mean home. Now they just looked like strangers caught in their own reflection. My mother, always elegant and composed, finally spoke. "Clara, he's blowing things out of proportion. You know your brother jokes sometimes." "Mom," I said, my voice breaking, "you called my children worthless." She flinched, her eyes darting to the side, as if hoping the lie could vanish if she didn't face it. Daniel placed his phone flat on the table, screen still glowing. "You've spent years treating Clara like an obligation, not a daughter. But tonight, you insulted her children. My children. That's where it ends." Mark scoffed, trying to recover his arrogance. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Cry to your internet followers?" Daniel's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Not exactly." He picked up his phone again and tapped the screen. A notification tone echoed through the room. Mark frowned. "What did you just do?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, calm as a storm in motion. "Let's just say that little recording isn't private anymore." The air went still. The walls seemed to close in. Mark's face went pale. "What do you mean it's not private anymore?" Daniel's eyes didn't blink. "I just sent it to the parent committee at your daughter's private school." The color drained from my mother's cheeks. "Daniel, you didn't." "Oh, I did," he said evenly. "Because your son here has spent months bragging about being a pillar of the community, while mocking his own sister's family behind closed doors." Mark shot up from his chair. "You'll ruin me." Daniel tilted his head. "No, Mark. You did that yourself." My brother lunged toward him, but I stood up between them, my voice shaking yet steady. Stop. You think humiliation is only yours to give? You've been handing it out like dessert for years. Tonight, you finally get a taste. Lily tugged my hand gently. Mommy, can we go home? I knelt down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, soon, baby. Mommy's just finishing something. My father finally spoke, his tone low and icy. Clara, enough. You're embarrassing the family. I straightened my shoulders, meeting his eyes with a calmness I didn't know I had. No, Dad. You embarrassed yourselves. I'm just done pretending it's love. Daniel stood beside me, his arm brushing mine. We're leaving. As we walked toward the door, my brother's voice cracked behind us. You'll regret this. Daniel didn't even turn. Maybe. But at least we'll regret it together, with dignity. And for the first time in years, I felt free. By the next morning, the storm had already begun. The group chat my brother adored, the one full of other parents from his daughter's elite school, was on fire. Someone had forwarded Daniel's recording. In less than an hour, Mark's name was trending on the local Facebook forum under the tag #HypocriteDoctor. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Clips of my mom laughing in the background. My dad saying, "Don't invite Clara next time. She lowers the tone." Daniel showed me the comments while sipping his coffee. Looks like your family just got a dose of public accountability. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. I didn't want revenge to feel this real. He reached over, taking my hand. It's not revenge, Clara. It's exposure. Later that afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. My mother. Her voice trembled, not with guilt, but with fear. Clara, please take it down. Your brother's losing patience, and the school board called him in. You've made your point. I took a slow breath.
No, Mom.
The point isn't made until you understand that love doesn't mean silence. There was a long pause, then a quiet sniffle. You've changed, she whispered. I smiled sadly.
No, Mom.
I finally stopped apologizing. When I hung up, Daniel met my gaze. You think this will make them learn? He asked. Maybe not, I said softly. But they'll never forget. That evening, I got a message from an unexpected number, my father. Family meeting. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. No excuses. I showed it to Daniel. He exhaled sharply. They're not calling to apologize. I know, I replied, but I'm not going there for them. I'm going there to finish this. The next night, the same dining room that once held our birthdays and holidays now felt like a courtroom. My parents sat stiffly on one side, Mark and his wife on the other. Their eyes were cold, hollow. My mother started first. Clara, you've humiliated this family. What you did was cruel. I stared right at her. Cruel? You called my children worthless. You stood by while your son mocked my husband. Mark leaned forward. We were joking, Clara. Families tease each other. Families don't break each other. I interrupted. Daniel placed a folder on the table. This isn't just about teasing. We filed a defamation claim this morning. Every word in that recording can be used as evidence. My father's face flushed red. You take your own family to court? Daniel's voice was calm, steady. We take bullies to court. Blood doesn't excuse cruelty. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air was sharp and still. Finally, I rose from my chair, gathering my bag. Enjoy dinner, I said quietly. This is the last meal you'll ever share with someone who lets her kids be treated like trash. By morning, the news had already broken beyond the family circle. Local papers were running headlines about Dr. Mark Halston under investigation for professional misconduct. Daniel's defamation claim had triggered a chain reaction. Reporters found other parents and even former patients who'd been quietly waiting to speak up. When I walked into my office that day, people weren't whispering behind my back anymore. They smiled. They knew. But the real shock came at 2 p.m. My father showed up. Not the proud, commanding man I remembered. This one looked smaller, worn down. He stood at my office door, hat in hand. Clara, I came to say I'm sorry. I looked up slowly. For what? For laughing? For raising a son who thinks belittling others makes him powerful? He swallowed hard. For not stopping it. for not seeing what we became. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't elegant. It was the first honest thing I'd ever heard him say. "I lost the right to be your father the day I stayed silent," he whispered. "But maybe I can still be a grandfather." The words cracked something inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the wall between grief and healing shifted. I nodded faintly. "If you mean it, start with them." I pointed to the photo of Lily and Max on my desk. "Earn their trust. Mine comes last." He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. "I will." 3 months later, everything had changed. Mark's medical license was suspended pending investigation. His wife had filed for divorce, and the house he once bragged about sat dark and empty. My mother stopped hosting parties. No guests wanted to sip champagne in a house built on gossip and cruelty. As for my father, he kept his word. Every weekend, he'd visit quietly, bringing coloring books for Lily and model kits for Max. He never overstepped, never asked for forgiveness. He earned it, inch by inch. One evening, as I watched him help Max build a wooden airplane, Daniel whispered, "You did it. You broke the cycle." But I shook my head softly. "No, we did. I just stopped letting shame run this family." Outside, the sunset spilled through the windows, golden and peaceful. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from an unknown number. "Mark, you destroyed me. I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a moment, then typed back slowly.
No, Mark.
"I'm not happy. I'm free." Then I blocked his number, forever. Later that night, Lily curled up beside me and said, "Mom, are we safe now?" I smiled, brushing her hair from her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. We're finally safe." And as she drifted to sleep, I realized peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the absence of fear. And that night, in my own home, we finally had both.
I sat on the edge of my couch, wrapped in an old fleece blanket that still smelled faintly of cinnamon from last year. The room was quiet, lit only by the soft blink of dollar store string lights draped over the miniature pine tree I'd dragged up the stairs myself. It wasn't much 3 feet tall, leaning slightly left, decorated with mismatched ornaments I'd collected from thrift bins over the years, but it was mine. And tonight, it was the only light in the room. Outside, I could hear muffled laughter from the neighboring apartment, clinking glasses, bursts of joy. Someone was playing an off-key version of Silent Night on a piano. I tried to smile to pretend it didn't sting. But it did. It always did. This was the 3rd Christmas in a row without a call, a text, or even a passive-aggressive holiday card from my family. The first year, they blamed a scheduling mix-up. The second, they said they assumed I was busy and didn't want to pressure me. But this year, they didn't bother with excuses. Just silence. Until my phone buzzed. For a split second, my heart lifted. Maybe it was a last-minute "we're thinking of you" message. Maybe someone remembered. But when I picked it up, all I saw was a subject line "Shared Family Holiday Costs," breakdown attached, and a PDF file. I tapped it open. At the top, in bold calibri, it read, "Holiday Yacht Party, Shared Family Expenses. Total $6,100 split 3 ways. My share $3,050. I blinked. Was this a joke? I scrolled down looking for any hint of sarcasm. A winking emoji, a "just kidding." Nothing. Just bullet points catering dock fees open bar and a polite reminder to transfer payment to my father's bank account by January 5th. I hadn't even known there was a yacht party. I hadn't been invited. Not a text, not a mention. Nothing. But they remembered me when it was time to settle the bill. My stomach twisted. I set the phone down and looked back at my little tree. Its lights kept blinking warm and steady as if the world hadn't shifted in that one moment. I used to love Christmas. Used to bake with Mom, argue with Braxton over what movie to watch. He wanted action. I wanted something sentimental. Dad would wrestle with tangled lights and pretend to complain. We were loud, messy, but together. Now they had a yacht, and I had a bill. I stared at that invoice until the numbers blurred. Not even a greeting, just a request for money as if I were some disconnected relative whose only value was financial. I leaned back against the couch, my throat tightening. They hadn't set a place for me at the table, but they'd carved out a space for my share of the expenses. And somehow that said everything. I stared at the blinking lights on the tree, but all I could see was the number on the invoice, $3.50. That wasn't just a bill, it was a memory dragged out of the quiet corners I'd tried to seal off. A reminder of every time they'd overlooked me and how I'd let them. Growing up, my dad used to call me the independent one. He said it like a badge of honor, as if I'd won something by not needing help. He'd mention it at cookouts and holiday letters whenever relatives came around. Corinne's always been the independent one, handles herself. I used to smile when he said it, thinking it meant he was proud. But over time, it stopped sounding like pride and started feeling like a door quietly closing. It meant I didn't need attention, didn't need support, didn't need celebration. It gave them permission to leave me off the group texts, to assume I'd be fine without the invite, the help, the hug. And I was until I wasn't. Braxton, on the other hand, didn't have to earn affection. It was just given. He could miss curfew crash Mom's car, forget birthdays, and still be the son we all revolved around. He's just figuring things out, they'd say. Or worse, that's just Brax. Meanwhile, I got lectures for missing one chore or bringing home an A instead of an A+. Even now, they were still propping him up. That yacht party wasn't just a celebration, it was a coronation. He'd landed some regional manager title at a property firm, and they threw him a private cruise to mark the occasion. What they didn't say, what he definitely didn't say, was that 3 months ago he'd panicked over the application. He'd sent me his 2-page resume in shambles full of typos and half-sentences. "I don't think I'm qualified," he'd said over the phone, voice low, like he was afraid of being found out. "It's out of my league." So I stayed up 2 nights reworking it. I rewrote entire sections, polished the formatting, crafted a cover letter from scratch. I even walked him through common interview questions, pretending I didn't notice how much he leaned on me. He got the job, then the boat, then the invoice for me. No thank you text, no shout out, not even a private message. And now I owed $3,000 for the party I helped make possible without even realizing it. That was the worst part. Not the money, not even the exclusion. It was knowing I had poured effort into someone who wouldn't have done the same for me, who didn't even think to try. They kept calling me the independent one, but what they really meant was disposable. And maybe for the first time in my life, I was ready to stop wearing that label like it meant I was okay, because I wasn't. Not anymore. I stared at the invoice one last time, then opened my banking app. I didn't hesitate. I typed in my father's account details, entered $1 hour, and wrote in the memo line, "Santa skipped me too." No explanation, no venom. Just the kind of message someone might laugh at if they weren't busy realizing what it really meant. I hit send. The screen flashed, transfer complete. And just like that, I felt something unstick in my chest. Not relief exactly, but a shift. Like I had finally said something I'd been swallowing for years. I set my phone down, stood up, and walked over to my tiny kitchen table, opening my laptop. It was time. The Netflix account, mine. Hulu, mine. Spotify Premium. You guessed it. Amazon Prime, HBO, Disney Plus, all under my name. I'd added family members over the years without thinking. It had always been easier to just include them than to hear complaints or guilt-tripped excuses. But not tonight. I went through each account methodically. Remove user, change password, log out on all devices, confirm. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel petty either. I felt clean, like finally washing off a layer of invisible dust that had been clinging to me since I was old enough to pick up their slack without asking. Next, the family phone plan. I'd been paying for most of it for the last 4 years. Somehow, it had become easier for everyone to just keep it that way. "We'll Venmo you," they said, until they didn't. The last payment from my dad had come 11 months ago. I opened the mobile carrier's portal and removed their lines, one by one. Then came the credit cards. 2 of them were in my name, both handed over to my parents for emergencies. I should have canceled them a long time ago, but there was always some reason not to. What if they needed it? What if it caused a scene? What if it made me seem ungrateful? Now, I didn't care. I froze both accounts and submitted requests for new cards with new numbers. No one else would touch my name again without my permission. By the time I closed my laptop, it was past midnight. The apartment was quiet, still glowing from the little tree in the corner. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. Done being convenient. Done being quiet. Done being the one who gave because it was expected. That night I didn't sleep easily, but for the first time in years I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. By morning the messages had already started. The first one came from my mom. "Corinne, something's wrong with the Netflix account. Keep saying it's unavailable. Did you change something?" No greeting, no Merry Christmas, just concern about being logged out of a screen. I didn't answer. Next came a string of missed calls from my dad, then a voicemail half gruff and half confused. "I think there's a billing error with the phone plan. Call me back so we can sort it out." I deleted it without listening to the rest. Then the family group chat lit up. Braxton. "Okay. What's going on? Why can't I get into Amazon? Mom, everything's down. Did the cards expire? Braxton again? Pretty immature Corinne. You could have just said something instead of being petty." That one made me stop. Immature. Petty. As if what I'd done was a tantrum. As if my silence and boundaries were childish instead of overdue. I scrolled back through the chat history. Weeks of jokes, plans, and photos I was never included in. Celebrations I never knew about. Comments I hadn't responded to because they were never meant for me. They were meant for each other. I was just there, tagged when needed. Quiet. Convenient. And now, suddenly, I mattered because they couldn't binge-watch shows or get free shipping. I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't, but because there was nothing to say that wouldn't be twisted into more guilt. No one asked if I was okay. No one asked where I'd been, how I was spending the holidays, or whether I needed anything. It was all what happened to our perks, our access, our conveniences. They didn't miss me. They missed what I gave them. I muted the chat and turned off notifications. The silence that followed felt like the first real gift I'd gotten in years. It was never about family. Not really. It was about what I could offer, what I could fix, what I could cover without complaint. And now that I had unplugged the wires holding up the illusion they were scrambling, not because I was gone, but because their comfort had gone with me. It was the clearest they had ever spoken without saying a word. Around noon, my phone rang with an unknown number. For a second, I considered ignoring it, assuming it was just another robocall or a last-ditch attempt from someone trying to get through. But something made me answer. "Hi, this is Erica from Bank Ridge Credit Union's fraud department." "Is this Corinne Albright?" I confirmed, cautious. "We've received a report regarding potential unauthorized activity on 2 credit cards registered under your name. Do you have a few minutes to go over some account details?" I closed my eyes for a beat. Of course. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice steady. She began listing off the accounts I'd frozen 2 nights before, the ones I'd opened years ago for emergencies, the same ones my father had used for gas groceries and the occasional dinner out that somehow turned into regular use. There was a report of fraudulent access on both accounts, Erica said. The caller claimed they'd been locked out of funds they were authorized to use. I took a breath. "There's no fraud," I said calmly. "I'm the account holder. No one else is on those cards." I froze them intentionally. A short silence. And the people previously using the cards. "My parents," I said. "They were using them without my consent. They knew the cards weren't theirs." I let it slide for too long. "That's over now." Another pause. I could hear typing on her end. "Understood," she said finally. "So, just to confirm, you're aware of all recent account changes and you authorize all of them." "I do," I said. "There's no fraud here. Just a family who mistook me for a doormat." I hadn't meant to say that last part out loud, but once it left my mouth, I didn't take it back. Erica let out a soft chuckle, not unkind. "I'll close the fraud report and make a note on the file." "Thank you," I said. "Take care of yourself, Corinne," she added before hanging up. I stared at my phone screen for a long moment afterward, feeling the echo of my own words. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't broken down. I'd just told the truth. And the strange thing was, it didn't feel like confrontation. It felt like freedom. They wanted the benefits of my name, my resources, my silence. But now they had to deal with something unfamiliar, me unafraid to be heard. After the call with the bank, I didn't bother checking the group chat again. The notifications kept coming, but I let them pile up. I knew what they'd say before even reading them, confusion masquerading as concern, followed by thinly veiled guilt trips wrapped in the word family. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, not even out of anger. I was just done. For the first time in years, I let the silence grow without rushing to fill it. I didn't explain myself. I didn't soften the edges of their discomfort. I stopped managing their emotions like it was my unpaid job. It was strange at first, the quiet, the absence of expectation. No calls asking for favors, no sudden bills forwarded to my inbox, no small talk masking requests, just stillness. And then, without warning, New Year's Eve arrived. I didn't have plans. I didn't make any. But around 7, I put on a sweater I loved and walked to a small restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, just warm lighting and the hum of soft music. I asked for a table by the window. The waiter brought me a menu and didn't blink at the fact that I was alone. I ordered a glass of red wine, a ribeye, and mashed potatoes. The meal came hot and unhurried. I didn't rush through it. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what they were doing or if they were wondering about me. I just ate. And when midnight came and the restaurant filled with gentle cheers and clinking glasses, I raised mine quietly. No one toasted with me. No one needed to, because I wasn't toasting the year ahead. I was honoring the part of me that had finally stopped begging to belong. For so long I had accepted scraps, emotional leftovers, last-minute invites if I was lucky, always the one who understood, the one who bent so others wouldn't have to. But tonight I had chosen myself, not in rebellion, not to make a point, just because I was tired of waiting to be seen by people who only looked for me when they needed something. I paid the bill, left a generous tip, and stepped outside into the cold, crisp air. The streets shimmered with celebration, but I didn't feel left out. For once, I wasn't hoping for a text that wouldn't come. I had finally shown up for me. The email came the second week of January. Subject line: "We need to talk." I almost deleted it without opening, but something in me wanted to know what version of the story he was trying to tell. I clicked. The message wasn't long, but it was careful, every sentence trimmed to sound concerned without admitting anything. He said he'd noticed some changes, that things seemed tense lately. Then came the kicker. Family sticks together even when things get hard. We should never forget that. There it was, wrapped in sentiment, rolled in nostalgia, but hollow. He didn't mention the yacht party, the invoice, the fraud report. He didn't say sorry. He didn't ask how I was. Just implied that I had broken something I was supposed to keep intact. I stared at his message for a long time before hitting reply. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I typed 4 words. "So why didn't you?" That was it. No greeting, no signature. Just a mirror held up to his carefully crafted guilt. I hit send and closed my laptop. I didn't need to wait for a response. I knew one wouldn't come, not one with honesty anyway. They had spent years calling me strong, resilient, the one who holds it all together. But strength had become their permission slip to forget me, to skip inviting me, skip thanking me, skip showing up. Now I had said the one thing they'd never expected to hear. I had asked the question that didn't come with an easy answer, one that cut past the excuses and politeness and landed exactly where it hurt. I didn't need an apology. I needed them to sit in the silence they created, the one they'd filled with my usefulness but never my presence. The next day, Braxton texted, "You're tearing this family apart. How can you do this to us? You owe us more than this." I read it once and didn't respond. He hadn't asked why I was hurt. He hadn't even acknowledged it. All he saw was the break in the system that had always benefited him. But I wasn't patching it up anymore. I wasn't the fixer, the buffer, the bridge. I was the question they didn't want to answer. And that finally was enough. I spent the next few weeks quietly rebuilding my life, this time with walls they couldn't reach through. I opened new bank accounts with passwords only I knew, requested new cards, changed every billing address and login detail. I called the phone company and started a new plan just for me. No shared lines, no quiet leeches in the background. I updated subscriptions one by one, attaching them to a fresh email I'd never once given to my family. It wasn't about revenge. It was about release. With every account I reclaimed, I felt something uncoil in my chest, like I was peeling off layers of responsibility I'd never agreed to carry in the first place. No more emergency calls asking me to fix things. No more forgotten birthdays that I still sent gifts for. No more being the only one who remembered details they never bothered to write down. The weight they'd dropped on me for years, I was finally setting it down. My apartment felt different now. Not bigger, not cleaner, just lighter. I started lighting candles again, made dinner for myself with more care than usual, even started sleeping through the night without checking my phone, half expecting some last-minute crisis only I could solve. They stopped messaging. Or maybe they kept going and I just didn't look. I had muted every thread, deleted every shortcut. I didn't need to see more versions of their disappointment masquerading as concern. This year they didn't unwrap anything from me. No cards, no gift baskets ordered last minute to keep the peace. No quietly absorbed costs. What they got instead, without ceremony, without warning, was the realization that the daughter they overlooked was the one who had been holding the whole system together, and now she was gone. Not out of rage, not with slammed doors or shouted accusations, just gone. They thought I was strong because I never made demands, because I showed up without being asked, because I forgave without being acknowledged. But the truth was, I wasn't strong. I was just exhausted, and the difference was everything. They didn't lose the problem child. They lost the person who made everything work in the background, the person they assumed would always be there because she always had been. But maybe I'd just been first. First to be forgotten. First to be used. And now, finally, first to walk away. "Hey, sis!" Lila chirped, her voice bright with the kind of giddy confidence that usually meant she'd done something reckless. "So, I maxed out your credit cards. But don't worry, Mom and Dad said you'd understand. I just closed on my dream house. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was standing in the middle of my one-bedroom apartment in Denver, still in my work heels, staring at my phone as credit alert after credit alert popped up. The total $48,000. All charged within 24 hours. "You always play it so safe, Nora," she continued, breezy and oblivious. "And I've been working so hard on my influencer brand, you know I needed a space that reflects that. Something inspirational. Honestly, this place is perfect. Mom says it's about time I had something of my own." I sat down at my kitchen table, carefully closing my laptop before I crushed it with my hands. I took a breath. Then another. "When's the housewarming?" I asked, my voice steady, even though my chest felt like it was cracking open. "This Saturday. You have to come. I mean, you basically bought it." She laughed. That same carefree laugh that had gotten her out of everything since we were kids. She hung up before I could respond. For a few minutes I just sat there, letting the silence crawl over me. The window buzzed with city noise, but inside everything felt still. My hands were trembling, but not from panic. Not this time. This wasn't shock. This was clarity. I opened my laptop again, not to check the charges, not to cry. I opened a folder I'd labeled 6 months ago. Contingency. Lila. Inside, it camera footage flagged emails, notarized alerts. I'd been preparing for this moment even if I didn't want to admit it, even if I still hoped she might change. The phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. "Nora, sweetheart, please don't be upset. Lila really needed this. Think of it as a gift. You'll be fine, you always are." I stared at the screen, then back at my files. Maybe they were right. I am fine, just not in the way they expect. I opened a blank page and started writing out a list. Not of what I'd lost, but of what came next. It wasn't the first time Lila had taken something from me. The first big one was the college fund. I was 18 packing for campus when Mom sat me down with a brittle smile and said, "We had to help Lila with her boutique idea. She's passionate, Nora. You're so good with numbers you'll find a way." I did. I picked up 2 jobs and lived off microwaved soup for 4 years. Then came the car, my first real one bought after 3 years of saving. Lila asked to borrow it for a weekend trip. 2 days later it was totaled and my insurance dropped me. She was going through a breakup, Dad said, handing me bus money. Try to be compassionate. Always the same refrain, "You're strong, Nora. She needs more." I believed it longer than I should have. I let it slide because I wanted to be good, the dependable daughter, the steady one. And maybe some part of me hoped naively that one day they'd see how much it cost me. But hope started thinning out last fall. That's when I got a call from the bank, a flagged loan application in my name. I knew immediately who it was, and this time I didn't explain it away. I didn't confront her. I just started collecting. I bought cameras and placed them around my apartment desk drawer entryway computer station. I archived every suspicious email, saved every strange voicemail. And slowly, the truth stopped being something I felt it became something I could prove. So when Lila called about the house, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I opened the folder and watched a video of her 3 weeks ago unlocking my front door with a key she swore she returned, flipping through my desk until she found my wallet. She held up my gold card like it was hers. I hit pause and stared at the still frame. Her smile was wide, triumphant, like the world belonged to her and I was just the supporting character keeping it funded. But not this time. This time I wasn't cleaning up behind her. I was moving in front of her, and I knew exactly where to start. I spent that night combing through my files, every screenshot, every voicemail, every saved email from Mom with phrases like, "She's going through a lot and let's not make it harder for her." One message even hinted that I wouldn't notice a little help being taken. They always couched it in concern, like what they were doing was love. But love doesn't require stealing behind someone's back and calling it support. I archived it all, organized it by date source relevance, a digital timeline of betrayal. Then I opened Instagram. There was Lila twirling on hardwood floors in a video captioned, "Manifestation works if you believe hard enough the car dream house the car blessed." In another post, she posed on the front steps with Mom and Dad, all matching pastel outfits, all teeth and filters. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere, neither were the credit cards that paid for it. That might have been the moment something hardened in me. The house. That particular house. I knew that address. I typed it into our internal system at Morris & Haley, the investment firm where I'd worked for nearly a decade. My name doesn't show up publicly anywhere on the development, but I helped design the financial model for the entire community. I know the property manager, I know the real estate broker, I know which permits haven't cleared and how many liens exist on neighboring parcels. Her house, the one she stole from my future, was already sitting on ground I'd helped vet. I stared at the property file for a long time, feeling that strange blend of fury and power rise in my chest. They thought they'd pulled something over on me. But they built their dream house on a foundation I helped pour, and they were about to find out what happens when the quiet one finally decides to stop staying quiet. By Tuesday, Lila had posted a kitchen reveal video featuring white marble counters and gold fixtures tagging half a dozen interior brands. The caption read, "Can't believe this is real life. Proof that if you leap, the universe catches you." The universe apparently had my credit limit. In another post, she posed in a silk robe with a coffee mug writing "Morning Light in my forever home. Hits different." It hit me differently too, like a punch in the ribs. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad had gone from evasive to pushy. "We just need you to sign the refinancing paperwork," Dad said over the phone. "It's a technicality. You're already on the credit lines anyway, so this would just make things cleaner." "You always make things smoother," Nora Mom added. "And Lila's under so much pressure right now with all the attention. Can't you just support her quietly for once?" I smiled, even though they couldn't see it. "Of course. I'll bring everything to the housewarming party." "Oh, good," Mom sighed. "We'll have the papers printed. You can sign them there." They had no idea what I was actually bringing. On Wednesday, I met with a real estate attorney. On Thursday, with compliance at my firm to clarify legal ties to the development. By Friday, I had notarized documentation security footage stills printed in color and a signed statement from the property manager confirming the buyer's name and funding source. I slid everything into a thick manila envelope and placed it carefully in my work bag. Let them decorate their lies. Let them sip sparkling wine and toast to false triumphs. I'd be there on time, polite and smiling. But I wasn't showing up to celebrate. I was showing up to collect. The driveway was lined with SUVs and imported sedans. Someone handed me a mimosa before I even reached the front door. The house smelled like new paint and expensive candles, the kind that tried too hard to suggest peace. Nora Lila squealed, rushing over in a silk wrap dress that probably cost more than my rent. You came. You have to see the upstairs bathroom. It's like spa vibes. She pulled me into a hug like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't broken into my apartment and drained every card I owned. I smiled and hugged her back. I brought you a housewarming gift, I said softly. Her eyes lit up. You didn't have to. I mean, technically, you already did. She giggled. I raised my voice just enough. Actually, I think this is something the whole family should see. A few heads turned. I turned toward my parents standing near the dining room sipping champagne. Mom, Dad. You too. They exchanged a glance. They recognized my tone. The one I used the day I discovered Lila took my college fund. It was the voice I used when I stopped asking and started acting. A hush settled as the room filled in around us, party chatter fading to murmurs. I pulled the manila envelope from my bag and set it on the marble kitchen island. Lila, I said calmly. Since you believe in sharing blessings, I thought I'd share something too. One by one, I pulled out the printed still security footage of her in my apartment, her hand on my wallet. Copies of my credit card statements showing the charges. Screenshots of her Instagram posts time-stamped and notarized. Emails from my parents suggesting I should be flexible with my financials. My mother clutched her glass like it might shield her. My father opened his mouth, then shut it again. And finally I said, laying down the last page, a legal breakdown of what you're looking at: credit card fraud, identity theft, and breaking and entering. Plus, aiding and abetting. Lila stared at the papers like they were in a different language. The color drained from her face. You're joking, she whispered. I met her eyes. No, I'm finally serious. Around us, the guests stood frozen. No one reached for a refill. No one laughed. I told you I brought a gift, I said. Now it's time to open it. And then I reached into my bag again, and this time I pulled out the real decision. I placed the second stack of papers on the counter, neat and heavy. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You have two options, I said. Option 1, you sign over the deed and agree to a repayment plan in writing notarized. Every dollar you stole comes back with interest. Option 2, I hand everything over to the police, including the video, the emails, and the forged signature from last year's car lease. Lila's mouth parted, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted toward Mom, then Dad, then the papers. This is insane, she finally breathed. We're family. That's exactly why it's gone this far, I said. Because no one ever tells you no. I was going to pay you back, she whined, her voice already fraying. Once my content starts picking up again? No, I cut in. You were going to wait for me to forget, like I always do. Dad stepped forward. Nora, come on. Jail time over some money. It's not just money, I said. It's everything. The entitlement, the lies, the fact that you stood by while she robbed me and then asked me to sign more away. Mom sniffled. We didn't mean harm. We just wanted both our girls to be okay. You wanted her to succeed at my expense, I replied, and you expected me to absorb it quietly like always. Lila's hands shook as she hovered over the document. You'd really do this to me, she whispered. To your own sister. You already did this to me, I said, calm as stone, and no one stopped you. I watched her face shift. Anger, shame, confusion, then fear. Real fear. She turned to our parents, pleading with her eyes, but they said nothing. For the first time in my life, they had no script. I pushed the pen toward her. You choose Lila. This isn't revenge. It's boundaries. Her fingers curled slowly around the pen, and for the first time in years, she looked unsure of what came next. I let her sit with that uncertainty, 'cause that's where growth begins. Lila showed up to the signing 15 minutes late, flanked by our parents like they were storming a courtroom. Her usual glam was dialed down, muted colors, no lashes, just enough to play the part of the misunderstood sister. But her eyes still had that old spark, the one that always meant she thought she had an angle. I have something to add, she said, pulling out a folder and sliding it across the table toward my attorney Diana. Before we go any further. Diana opened it without flinching. Inside was a photocopy of a contract dated 6 years ago, bearing my signature, apparently co-signing any future business debt Lila took on. Nora agreed to support my ventures, Lila said. That includes financial backing. This house falls under that umbrella. My parents nodded like they were in a rehearsal. Dad even folded his arms with a smug little smile. I picked up the page, studied the signature, then looked at Diana. Show them, I said. Diana turned her laptop toward the table. On screen, grainy footage from my old apartment. Lila at my desk holding a printout, pausing, then slowly tracing my signature over and over until it matched. She practiced it 8 times. I've known about this for years, I said, keeping my voice level. I kept the footage. I kept everything. Lila's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You forged my name, I continued. That document means nothing, and now that you've tried to use it to manipulate legal proceedings, it's evidence of attempted fraud. Diana slid the real transfer papers forward again. Shall we continue with the original agreement, or are we taking this to court? For the first time, Lila looked genuinely small. The room felt heavier now, no smugness, no backup plan. Just consequences. She didn't touch the pen. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded. I could wait. I had waited for years, but this time I wasn't the one squirming. The silence stretched too long, broken only by the ticking of the clock on Diana's wall. Lila stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Her hands hovered uncertain, waiting for someone to save her like they always did. Dad cleared his throat louder than necessary. Sign it. Lila blinked at him. What you heard me, he said, voice low and flat. Sign the papers, Lila. This is done. Her face crumpled for a second, not in tears, just disbelief. Like the one person who'd always bent the rules for her had finally stepped outside the game. Mom leaned forward, her voice soft and trembling. Nora, she didn't mean it this way. She gets caught up in things. You know how she is. I do, I said, not unkindly. And that's exactly why I'm doing this. But she's your sister. And I'm your daughter, I said. That never seemed to matter when I was the one cleaning up the mess. Lila lowered her head. Her fingers picked at the edge of the folder, still not moving toward the pen. I didn't say another word. I wasn't going to beg for closure she didn't deserve. Dad walked over, picked up the pen, and dropped it in front of her. Enough, he said, like he was talking to a child who'd finally pushed too far. Lila's signature was messy, almost angry, but it was real. No practiced lines, no fake flourishes. Just her name exposed and vulnerable for once. Diana notarized the documents. I watched as each page became official, binding, irreversible. Mom wiped at her eyes, but no one reached for her hand. Dad stood with his arms crossed, looking at the floor. I gathered the papers, carefully folded them into a new envelope, and stood up. No dramatic words, no parting shots. Just the weight of finality settling into the room. As I walked out, no one followed. No one called after me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for leaving them behind. It's been a year since the signing. A full year since I walked out of that office with a folder in my bag, and the weight of my family's expectations finally lifted off my shoulders. Lila never went to jail. I didn't press charges. She signed everything, stuck to the repayment plan, and surprisingly held up her end. Every month, like clockwork, a payment arrives. No late fees, no excuses, just a quiet transfer from her account to mine. She has a job now, A real one. Marketing associate at a small local firm. Not glamorous, but solid. Her Instagram looks different too. Gone are the luxury shots and faux deep quotes. Now, it's photos of coffee mugs beside spreadsheets, captions like, "Budgeting is self-respect" and "Financial literacy is healing." Sometimes I scroll through them and wonder if any of it is real, but then I remember at least now she's pretending in the right direction. Dad called a few months ago. He didn't try to justify anything, just said he was sorry, that he'd started seeing a therapist, that maybe they failed both of us in different ways. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Mom didn't call, but she left a voicemail last week. She sounded tired, not from anger, but from understanding. "You were right, Nora. She needed to fall," she said. "We never let her. That's on us." I saved the message. I haven't replied yet. Some days I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed quiet again, if I'd signed those papers, if I'd swallowed it all just to keep the peace. But then I see the changes, not perfect, not fast, but real, and I know that silence would have cost all of us more than we could afford. I open the banking app on my phone. The most recent deposit is there. Lila's note attached paid early this month. Thank you. I type a simple reply, received, take care, and close the screen. It's not forgiveness, but it's enough to keep walking forward. The house sold in the spring, just before the tulips came in. A young couple with 2 kids bought it, first-time homeowners eager and wide-eyed. I left the welcome packet on the counter with a handwritten note. May this home hold more honesty than mine ever did. The profit covered my remaining balances and the legal fees. I didn't keep the rest. I put it toward a down payment on a small condo downtown, just enough space for me, sunlight in the morning, and quiet at night. No cameras. No locks on desk drawers. No folder titled Contingency. I didn't need a backup plan anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to betray me. The promotion came through last quarter VP of Strategic Finance. My boss cited how I handled complex internal conflict with integrity and clarity. I almost laughed. I didn't tell him the conflict wore my last name. Lila still texts once a month with her payment receipts. This time it came early. Her message was short. Payment sent. Early this time. No emojis, no excuses. I typed back, thank you. That's our rhythm now. Professional, distant, clean. Mom and Dad invite me to dinner sometimes. I go. We talk about the weather and books and what therapy is teaching them. We don't talk about the house, or the signature, or the silence that lasted for decades. But I sleep well. Not because everything is perfect, but because for once, it's real.